I don't know, I have to switch this every time in the Iran PowerPoint here. Okay, Iran's executive is divided into two. You have a supreme leader as the head of state and a president who serves in the function as head of government in this case. The head of state, the supreme leader, is where the power sits. You have the Assembly of Experts as the group that appoints the supreme leader, and they may remove the leader. They've only had to do this once in history after the death of Ayatollah Khomeini in 1989, when they then elected Ayatollah Khamenei to replace the originator of the Islamic Republic. The leader is the man charged with determining the interests of Islam in terms of its governance, definitely a more powerful position than the president. The commander-in-chief of the armed forces is the supreme leader. The leader sets the tone for all policy, both domestic and foreign. The leader ultimately names directly 6 of the 12 members of the Guardian Council, the 6 clerics that are on the Guardian Council. Also appoints many other key state figures like the Friday prayer leaders, the chief judge, key media figures, and so on. And so lots of power in the hands of the supreme leader. Ultimately also controls the Banyads, Revolutionary Guard Corps, and the president is only allowed really truly to wander as much as the supreme leader wants him to. So lots of power executed by the leader, naming the Expediency Council and others. Very powerful position in the Islamic Republic as head of state. President of Iran is popularly elected, so you have a majority runoff vote for the presidency. The presidential term is 2 consecutive 4-year terms. We have him as the highest state official after the leader. I say him, although a couple of Iranian clerics have come out and said they believe a woman could be president, much to the chagrin of many of the conservatives. The president sets domestic policy through the cabinet in concert with the leader, supervises the economy, runs the government through the cabinet. Ultimately, as we see in Russia, the power ministries fall under the power of the supreme leader, so the president does not ultimately have control of those. And the president is it's a powerful position in Iran, but limited, like I said, leashed a little bit in terms of what he's able to do, because you have to act under the auspices of what the supreme leader wishes you to do. The legislature of Iran has 290 seats. Remember that 5 seats are dedicated to non-Muslims. So we have seats dedicated so that there are Christians and Jews and Zoroastrians in the Iranian parliament. Remember, no Baha'i, though. So for sure, no Baha'i. Both Shia and Sunni serve. Women have the right to vote. Women have the right to serve, and they do in the Majlis. The Majlis elections are carried out through both single and multi-member constituencies, so single-member districts like we've seen before, and also multi-member constituencies where a district gets multiple seats based on population. And there is a 25% threshold runoff in this case. So it's a different electoral system. You must get at least 25% of the vote. If no one gets 25 or not enough people get 25% of the vote, then there is a runoff, which always happens for some of the seats. The Majlis is hamstrung because of the Guardian Council's ability to not only determine who may run, but the Guardian Council's ability to veto un-Islamic legislation. So that makes the Majlis a bit more troubled in terms of its ability to pass legislation concretely, because the Guardian Council oversees it. The Guardian Council also very much dominated the selection process for the Majlis, especially in 2004, 2008, 2012. Making sure that the conservatives did, in fact, take the Majlis in those elections. Right now, the reformers and moderates have a plurality. They don't have a majority, but they do have a plurality. So that's a reflection of the Rouhani presidency and the at least temporary good feelings about the nuclear deal that Iran had with the United States before President Trump pulled us out of it. The legislature does your normal legislative duties. They pass laws, they ratify treaties, they approve the budget. They also may remove cabinet members in Iran. They also approve the 6 members of the Guardian Council that are nominated by the chief judge, who is nominated by the leader. So a little bit of Iranian power vertical there. So that is your legislature in Iran. Guardian Council, I've already talked a bunch about them, so we probably don't need to do too much here. Remember the two V's for the Guardian Council. They vet candidates nationally for any national office. So the Guardian Council may determines who may run in elections for the Assembly of Experts, the Majlis, and for the President, all three of those. And the Guardian Council also has veto power, the second V, over legislation coming out of the Majlis. So in the ways that they act, the Guardian Council may be seen to combine the features of an upper house because they wrestle with the Majlis in terms of legislation. They can act like a court in some cases because of some powers that they have. Electoral Commission, they oversee elections in Iran, and certainly a religious inquisition as they deem candidates Islamic or not, enough or not to run. They have 12 members, 6 of which are clerics appointed by the leader, and half of which, the other 6 rather, are lay lawyers named by the chief judge, who is again named by the leader. All members serve 6-year terms, 12 members on the whole, and like I said, the Guardian Council very much exerted its power in those 3 elections that we will talk about. Expediency Council, it is all appointed by the leader, and its primary duty is to mediate disputes between the Guardian Council and the Majlis. So if the Majlis and Guardian Council cannot resolve a dispute over language in a bill or a law, then you have the case go to the Expediency Council, and they will make the decision. That's their ultimate job. This body did not get created until the late 1980s. They didn't need it when Khomeini was around. And now they've also become a body that is very much seeing its power grow over the past couple of decades as they have become an advisory body to the leader, and they may even initiate laws on their own now. That was never part of what they were meant to do, but it's what they've grown into. All named by the leader, and it's about 30 to 35 men who collectively would be the most powerful men in Iran. The Assembly of Religious Experts is 86 experts. They don't have to be clerics, but they do have to be experts religiously. The Guardian Council does determine who may run. They choose the leader. They have the right to dismiss them, and they will serve 8-year terms. The Guardian Council determines who may run because it is a national elected office in that case. The Revolutionary Guard Corps is very important for us, and I worry that we don't hit it long enough in class because it is very powerful both militarily and economically. So do make sure that you do a good review on it. Make sure you check the readings on that. The Revolutionary Guard Corps is the most powerful military in Iran. It's the parallel military organization along with the traditional Iranian army, the military. The traditional Iranian military defends the state. The Revolutionary Guard Corps defends the revolution. And they have the best military equipment. They have the best forces. They have extremely powerful economic interests. They run a lot of the Iranian economy through the Banyads. And so because of the power that they've achieved as a group, because of the economic power that they have, it's major career opportunities for a lot of people. So lots of recruitment done through religious neighborhoods, lower class neighborhoods, to give those people that upward mobility and people who will be loyal to the supreme leader. The Basij I have on here as well. They don't fall under the power of the Revolutionary Guard Corps, but they're another protector of the revolution. They are the paramilitary protectors of the revolution. Remember that the Basij were the ones on the street going after people during the Green Movement that we saw. When we talk about political parties in Iran, we don't really talk about parties very much at all, and we talk about factions instead. So we have political tendencies or factions in Iran, and the first faction is the hardline conservatives. They're also known as the principalists. Please make sure you know that term. The principalists, that's the other title that they've become to be known as now. The hardline conservatives have always controlled the supreme leadership. They have very much had problems governing over the course of time. I talked about earlier they had problems with brain drain in the late 1980s, or excuse me, during the 1980s, because you had people leave Iran out of fear of living in the Islamic Republic. There was a fear of investment from a business standpoint, lack of governing experience on the whole. On the whole, the conservatives tend to have a contempt for democratic pluralism because if it's true pluralistic democracy, then their hold on power could be quite tenuous. They do very much want to uphold the religious norms, as seen in the theocratic Republic of Iran. Definitely want to resist any attempts to alter the regime to make it more democratic because they know that will threaten their grip on power, and they do see themselves. It's a good parallel to the Soviet Union here or to the Chinese Communist Party. The conservatives very much see themselves as a vanguard class or as a vanguard group. And remember that we said a vanguard party was the party that would lead the revolution and then lead the state after the revolution. And that's the name of the game for the hardliners here. They use the U.S. presence in the Middle East, especially in the early 2000s, as a means by which to heighten their legitimacy. They used the Basij to strengthen themselves, and they were most recently personified in the presidency by the presidency of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. Ayatollah Khamenei has been the supreme leader since 1989. So Ayatollah Khomeini died in 89, and we had that election then by the Assembly of Experts. Khamenei was kind of a compromise choice. He was someone who would take the job. He was a mid-level cleric. They had to promote him up to Ayatollah to make it happen. But the big changes in Iran happened in 89. So we saw the death of Khomeini, the rise of Khamenei. We saw the elimination of the post of prime minister, the strengthening of the presidency, and we saw the presidency of the pragmatist Rafsanjani take place in 89 as well. So Khamenei has been a hardliner, doesn't have the credentials that Khomeini did, so he has utilized the Revolutionary Guard Corps, the courts, and others to solidify his power, and he has very much resisted attempts to further democratize Iran. Getting into his older years now, starting to think about a successor for sure. And Death to America just won't go away. The hardline faction will not relinquish Death to America. They see it as so central to their identity, so that chant and that nationalism from an anti-Western standpoint is something that will continue in Iran, even though the pragmatists and moderates have said, we don't need it anymore. The second faction that we'll talk about is the pragmatic faction, or the moderates. They are kind of a Chinese emulation there. We're still relatively authoritarian, but much more technocratic and much more pragmatic, focus more on the economy, loosen the economy from a liberalization standpoint, a bit more culturally tolerant in order to lessen tensions, and the moderate faction embodied by former President Ayatollah Ali Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani, who was the president from 1989 to 97. Some have put President Rouhani into this camp. But there is Mr. Rafsanjani. He was a big-time player, like I said, president for 2 terms throughout the 90s. You have to link his tenure as president to economic reforms, to a liberalizing of Iranian economy, to more globalization, more privatization of industry, looking to bolster the economy after a very tumultuous 1980s. He died, so he does not currently lead the Expediency Council, but he formerly did. Rafsanjani died in 2017. Wanted to run for the presidency in 2013. The Guardian Council did disqualify him, though. So big pragmatic figure, one of the godfathers of the revolution, dying in 2017. Then we have our third tendency, and we have the reformists. And the reformists are always asking to answer looking to answer the question, rather, how do we reconcile political modernity with our adherence to Islam? And they don't wish to decimate the religious nature of the country. They just want to make it more democratic than theocratic, make the elected bodies more important than the appointed bodies. And during the presidency of Mohammad Khatami from 1997 to 2005, they had an opportunity. The Tehran Spring took place in 2000 when the Majlis went to the reformists as well, but they could not dislodge the hardliners. They could not institutionalize reformism. The U.S. antagonism with the Axis of Evil speech very much undermined Khatami and gave Khamenei power to strengthened the hardliners' grip, and the reformists have been frustrated in their attempts. There is your reformist standard bearer. His name is still Mohammed Khatami, and he was the president for 2 terms. He won overwhelmingly in 1997 with 71% of the vote, won re-election in 2001. He was a reformist who called for a dialogue amongst civilizations. That was a refuting of Sam Huntington's Clash of Civilizations, put out a few years prior. I did say earlier that he saw a period of the Tehran Spring when the Majlis went to the reformists as well. He had gotten elected on a platform of greater freedom and democracy, much too many of your chagrin, if you will, because of that one question on the take-home test. There's your bullet, ladies and gents. It was not economic and social justice. It was greater freedom and democracy. He did seek to further understanding of Islam and the West between each other. He ran on themes of civil society, individual rights, rule of law, loosening the dress code, more free media, and so on. And he was elected because of those things. And Iranians were looking for more individual rights and freedoms, more political liberalization in those cases. In 1999, he started local council elections that had been in Iran's constitution, but they just hadn't used them before. And because it was local elections, the Guardian Council couldn't touch them, and the reformists did very well. All of this reform terrified the hardliners, however, because they saw him very much as Gorbachev in a turban, as this guy was preaching reforms, preaching modernization, saying he didn't want to, change the overall nature of Iran on the whole, didn't want to lose the theocratic republic, but just wanted to make it more democratic than theocratic. It sounded very much to the hardliners what Gorby had said to the Soviets just a handful of years earlier. So they worked to stifle him. He could not get by the Guardian Council. He could not get by the Expediency Council, nor the Supreme Leader. Like I said, we undermined him with our antagonistic talk as well, and his tenure came to an end in 2005 with a lot of reforms that were unfulfilled. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad was the president who followed Khatami. He represents the conservative faction. He served from 2005 to 2013, was elected in an upset in 2005. In fact, in the runoff, he defeated former President Rafsanjani. He was elected on a populist platform with economic and social justice for the poor, lots of nationalism, lots of anti-Westernism, anti-corruption. He talked about reducing class cleavages. He was very bellicose in confronting the United States and Israel, and he gained some traction because Iranians were frustrated with the U.S. military presence all around them and with President Bush's axis of evil words and the threats from the Bush administration to invade Iran. They were turning toward the hardliners, so he played on that, and he was, in the end, unsuccessful in his presidency. On the whole, economically, his economic programs did not work. He got forced down by the Bazaris at one point when he tried to raise taxes on some of their goods. They rebelled against that. He had to roll that back. And he was the one who did run for re-election in 2009, only to see the election turn into the Green movement. As you saw, the Green movement with Mir Hossein Mousavi rise up as a very strong challenger, and the same day as the election, the Guardian Council very quickly giving Ahmadinejad the election with over 63% of the vote. Remember that the public then came out en masse with the Green movement or Green Revolution, rising up and demanding, where's my vote, where's my vote? We saw the death of Neda, and it publicized on YouTube. We saw the Basij come in to crack down eventually. Hundreds of members of the Green movement were in fact arrested, given show trials, and put in prison. And of course, the main candidates, Mir Hossein Mousavi and Mehdi Karoubi, were placed under house arrest, where as of 2019 they remain. And then we have Hassan Rouhani, and I think we're going to wait on him.